Education has always played an important part in the history of our country. And of course, this has always been the case in Port Huron. Education has been valued and supported by our citizens down through the years. We have a rich history of educational involvement by our citizens, and our citizens can be justly proud of the educational story here in the city of Port Huron. In fact, so far as the history of Garfield School is concerned, an article appeared in the June 9, 1924 issue of the Times-Herald reporting that construction of Garfield School was about to begin with the pouring of concrete sills. It was also reported that there would be no basement due to the fact that Garfield School was being constructed on a lot that was really having a foundation of quicksand. A key element of Port Huron's educational story, of course, is Garfield School. And literally thousands of young people have passed through the halls of Garfield, receiving a major portion of their educational experience. No one can ever even begin to estimate the impact that this school has had on the lives of thousands of young people. Numerous teachers, custodians, and other staff members, as well as administrators, have given of themselves to enhance the lives and to enrich the lives of many young people. It was the custom for many years to name Port Huron schools after presidents. Woodrow Wilson, McKinley, Roosevelt, Cleveland, Jefferson, and Harrison are familiar school names to most of us. Perhaps many of us would have to go back quite a ways in our memory banks to recollect Adams School, Madison on the corner of Division and 7th Streets, and how about Monroe, located on Lyon Street? How about Jackson on Michigan and Glenwood? Or Van Buren on the corner of Court and 10th? And of course, we can't forget Tyler and Polk School, located at the corner of Court and 7th. And of course, we must mention Fillmore, Buchanan, and Lincoln. Although James Garfield served our nation as president for only a few months, his name sure is important to many of us. President Garfield was our 20th president and took office in 1881. Tragically, his life was cut short by an assassin's bullet shortly after taking office. However, his name lives on in the memories of many Port Huron residents, past and present. Citizen involvement has always been the lifeblood of any community, and this is true of school board members down through the years. Although the people whose names are on this plaque are no longer with us, their countless hours of dedicated service help to provide a building which has served the educational needs of thousands. One can only wonder if they could have imagined their work serving future generations for 70, and who knows how many more years to come in the future. Garfield first opened its doors for business in 1925. Susan Hubbard was the first principal. She came to Garfield after serving as principal over at the Fillmore School, and she served for 10 years until her retirement in 1935. The room at the corner of 10th and Garfield, so far as most school historians can recollect, has always been a kindergarten room. It certainly is today, and we know that it was at the opening of Garfield in 1925. Would anyone want to guess just how many young people received their initiation into public school education in this particular room? Certainly there have been many of them, and certainly the impact on the lives of these little five-year-olds has been significant. As we see in this first graduating picture, I should say the first kindergarten picture, in 1925, we have the Garfield Kindergarten Band. Kindergarten teachers, of course, are the special people who give their kids an initiation into public school education, and that has always been an important part of Garfield School.
I never forgot my kindergarten teachers, Miss Beamer and Miss Wilson. In fact, they used to live a block away, and I would go over and sweep the snow off their porch, and then they'd give me a ride to school. My fondest memories, of course, is story time, and I enjoyed watching the children listen to their story, and we gathered on the floor over there facing the fireplace. And then another fond memory is playing in this playhouse. I remember putting an apron on and doing dishes and playing house back in 1941.
Astor Wallen, affectionately known as Wally, was a charter member of Garfield's teaching staff. He was a fixture in Garfield's woodshop program for many years, until his retirement in the early 60s. Many students remember his no-nonsense approach to teaching basic shop skills. One of Mr. Wallen's early shop students was Jack Lloyd, a retired missionary to Appalachia, now living in retirement in Port Huron.
Mr. A.E. Wallen was my teacher in mechanical drawing, and I really liked his teaching. He also taught woodshop along with mechanical drawing, and he also coached the basketball and the football teams. But we made several blueprints for the woodshop while I was in that course. And I still have one of the blueprints that I made way back in 1930.
It has often been said that the principal of any school sets the tone, the educational climate, the total atmosphere for the school. And if there ever was a principal in the history of Garfield School that set the tone for that particular building, it was Harold Brownie Springer. Brownie Springer became principal of Garfield School in 1935 and remained the principal there until his retirement in 1960. His tenure as Garfield's principal was interrupted by World War II, where he served our country as a major. While Mr. Springer was serving his country, there were three men who served as Garfield's principal: William Van Ness, Claire Burnell, who later became the principal at the Washington Intermediate School, and Carl Steinburn, who later went on to serve at Woodrow Wilson. Certainly, Brownie Springer made some great contributions to Garfield School and the citizens of our community. It's likewise certain that many people have fond memories of him during the 40s and the 50s. And one teacher who really left his mark on the lives of a lot of young people at Garfield School during the 1950s was Fred Adolph. Now, Fred went on to teach at other institutions and most recently at St. Clair County Community College, where he recently retired. Fred Adolph wants to share some of the fond memories he had as a Garfield teacher.
The year's biggest event was the annual speech contest using the Toastmasters International format. In civics classes, each student had to give a 5-minute speech every 6 weeks, with a student, a Toastmaster, as the chairperson for each Friday. Each marking period, the requisites were changed, for example, from a speech to inform to a speech to persuade. By the last marking period, there were many polished speakers preparing for the annual speech contest. The incentive each week was to win and to be able to take home a little brown jug with the Speaker of the Week on the jug, or to be able to take home the railroad oil can for a week.
Mr. Horst Beyer, more commonly known as Fritz Beyer, became the principal of Garfield in 1960, and he served there until 1969, and yours truly had the privilege of working with him during the days of the 60s. During Mr. Beyer's years of leadership, the student population at Garfield School, which of course was an intermediate school at that time as well as an elementary school going from K through 8, had over 1,000 students. Now, when you consider the fact that Garfield School appears rather crowded today at 650 students, you can imagine those hallways at Garfield during the 60s when classes were passing. We're happy that Mr. Beyer can be with us today and share a little bit of the memories he had during his years at Garfield in the 1960s.
One of the things we did when we began there was to institute a reading program in intermediate grades and in junior high school. Every teacher at Garfield at that time, in the intermediate school and in the junior high, became a reading teacher. And we think we were very successful in that regard. I had no other school that gave me as much pleasure and appreciation as did Garfield. And I still look back in affection and appreciation when I think of Garfield.
Mr. Ronald Bradley served as principal at Garfield School, succeeding Fritz Beyer, starting in 1969 until Holland Woods Intermediate School opened in 1976. In 1976, when Mr. Bradley assumed his duties as principal at Holland Woods Intermediate School, his successor was Albert Reniker. Now, of course, not too many people know of the name Albert Reniker, but they more affectionately know him simply as Tiny Reniker. His booming voice, his no-nonsense approach to discipline, but yet that soft heart that all knew that he had, that love of helping his fellow man, really characterized his days at Garfield. He served there from 1976 until his retirement in 1987.
I will never forget my days as an administrator in all the schools that I worked in. And one of the philosophies I had at the end of the school day, as I would get on the PA system, I would say to the kids before they left, keep your hands, feet, and mouth to yourself, and you'll stay out of trouble.
Many teachers have given of themselves to teach at Garfield. Many have made tremendous impact on students. If we could talk to the thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of students who have gone through Garfield School, I'm sure if you interviewed them, they would share with you, so-and-so was my favorite teacher, or this particular teacher made an impact on my life. But if this question was given to 1,000 students, I'm sure one name coming up as a teacher that really had a strong influence on their life would be that of Helen Pocadillo. Miss Pocadillo was assigned to Garfield in 1965 and served there until her retirement in 1988.
I first came to Port Huron in 1944 as a first-year teacher at the Lincoln School. And I was there for 21 years. And finally, the enrollment declined. And so I was sent to Garfield School. And at this time, I want to share bits and pieces of my teaching years at Garfield. My first visit to my classroom, I noticed green chalkboards, both in the back and the front. The room was small, it was compact, I should say. All the cupboards and children's coat room, and there was a true drawer file on the west side of the room. There was 30 desks, a piano, and my desk. At the piano, I found out that I was going to have someone to play the piano for us for music class. Not all the rooms at Garfield and the elementary side had pianos. There was just, and many of the rooms had just books and records that went with them. The piano player was Miss Ivor Rood, and she played for 4 years until it was 1969 when we had itinerant teachers that were hired for art, music, and gym. And so there was a half hour a week we had music class. Another real treat was when a little petite lady, she was a senior citizen in the Garfield area, came to our room one early November morning, and she started putting a sketch on the board with colored chalk. She lived in that area, and she was an artist, a chalk artist. And I kind of waved my hand to the children to put their work down, and we watched her sketch 2 pilgrims. This was around Thanksgiving time, and a turkey, and then she filled it in, and then quietly left the room. She did this for about 5 years. Sometimes it was during holiday time when she would do it. At Easter time, one year she made a lily plant, and we kept it on the board until the end of school year. It was so pretty. At Christmas time, it was a lighted Christmas tree with gifts around it. And remember, the boards were green, but she knew just how to use the colors to shade the pictures in it. And that was Mrs. Gaines. The children were always eager to learn.
Of the numerous students who have attended Garfield down through the years, there have been students from a variety of backgrounds, cultural, ethnic, social, and economically, and this is one of the characteristics that have made Garfield and continues to make Garfield a very special place. But all of these students have their own particular goals, their particular needs and aspirations, all with great hopes, but hopes sometimes coupled with fear and the uncertainties that we all face in life from time to time. All with a common need to be loved and to be accepted. And Garfield teachers and other staff members have been there for 70 years to see that these needs are met. And we know that this great tradition will continue on for years to come. When Garfield opened in 1925, it was BC, that is, before computers. That was back many years ago when a chip meant a block of wood, and hardware meant hardware, and software wasn't even a word. Basically, kids have always remained the same. In a sense, the teaching process has remained somewhat constant. Building relationships between student and teachers has always been a part of that process, but techniques have changed. Modern technology has necessarily, and rightly so, having moved in. We're working with youngsters who are rapidly moving into the world of computers. We're fortunate at Garfield to have computer education. We're likewise fortunate to have parent volunteers who play an important part in instructional technology. Students have the opportunity to learn the basics of computer operation. The Media Center is the focal point of Garfield students' learning experience. Each student has the opportunity to come to the Media Center at least one time per week, perhaps more, for individual research, or an opportunity to look for that special book or sometime on the computer. The fine arts have always played a role in the educational program since the school opened in 1925. There has always been formal art and music instruction. Students have always had an opportunity to express their creative talents in these areas.
We're very excited about our 70th birthday party and our celebration with the community. Garfield Elementary School has been in the business of educating students for 70 years, and we believe then and we believe now that it's a total community and family connection that really makes our students become the very best that they can become.
It's a great pleasure to be here today representing the Port Huron Area School District Administration and Board of Education, helping to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Garfield School. Garfield has a rich history and tradition in Port Huron. We have several generations of people, several generations within a family of people that Garfield has affected their life in many, many ways. It's always a joy to see a school that has built on the rich traditions, the history, and is really a microcosm of our whole community. We want to bring very strong, positive hope for the future based on this rich history and tradition that Garfield has provided us as an institution that's an integral part of many of our lives within Port Huron.
Garfield School had its beginning in 1925 and continues today 70 years later. And who knows how many more years into the future. We would all hope that its influence would continue and would always have a positive influence on the young people that it serves.